G'day mate, how's life treating you? Hopefully all's good in your world. So, you're thinking of live streaming with a real camera? That's awesome. They can really up your game in stream video quality. There are a few things you should know before you rush out and buy a camera though. So, let's go through these and get you ready with everything you need to know to get you streaming or recording for YouTube or TikTok or whatever with a real camera. Hey, I'm Sean, Aussies24 on Twitch, where I stream every Sunday, Monday and Tuesday from 6:30 PM Australian Eastern Time. Why not drop by sometime? Okay, so you want to update your production quality for your stream, YouTube or TikTok videos by using a real camera. There's quite a lot that can go into deciding what the right camera is for your needs. Like, does it have a clean HDMI output? Can it autofocus without a reticle on the screen? Will it record endlessly or turn off after a set time? Can I just plug it in and go? What software or hardware will I need to make it work? Do I want a dedicated video camera, a DSLR or a mirrorless? What lens should I use? Will I use it for other things like photography or just for the stream? And how much money do I want to spend? It's a lot to go through. So let's dive in and see everything you need to live stream with a real camera. Oh, and before I get too far into it, if you could just tap that like, subscribe and bell button, that would be real great, as it really does help me with the YouTube algorithms. Thanks mate. I guess first off, you need to decide if you're planning to use the camera for photography as well as your content, being your stream or YouTube or TikTok stuff. This is pretty easy if you do want to use it for photography, and I'd suggest you do, as it's an awesome skill to learn if you're willing to put in a little bit of effort. Then you're going to want a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. If you're planning to only use it for your content, then a dedicated video camera like a Panasonic camcorder or something along those lines would be fine. Personally, I think a DSLR or a mirrorless is a better option, as there's a lot more flexibility in what you can do with it. The downside is it's a little more tricky to get set up perfectly. Most people use a photography camera like a DSLR or mirrorless, so that's what I'll focus on for this video. The issue with most of these cameras is they're not specifically designed to be a video camera, and as such many of them are limited to say 30 minutes of continuous filming before they stop. So unless you plan to stream for less than that time, you either need to use one that can film endlessly or use a program like SparkoCam that will essentially restart the timer so that you can get that endless filming. SparkoCam is a cheap program that you can use to help get a clean output and to remove any focus reticle, and also, as I mentioned, it can restart your camera so that you won't have it turning off after a certain amount of time. It's not available for every camera, so that's something you might want to consider when you're buying. Can the camera give a clean output? Can it put out a live feed without the focus reticle? And if not, is it a camera that will work with SparkoCam or a similar type of program? Once that's looked at and you've narrowed down your choices, you now need to look at a few other things, like how good is its low light filming? If you're planning to film in low light, obviously. How good is its autofocus and facial recognition, especially if you're planning to do filming without the help of someone behind the camera? Is weight an issue for you? A heavy full frame DSLR like a 5D Mark IV or a cropped frame, say like a 90D, they may be too heavy for you to carry all day if you're vlogging, up with your arm out like this. You may prefer a crop frame mirrorless M50, which is much smaller and lighter. All of these will require you to look at your personal needs and then look at some reviews of the cameras you've narrowed down the choices to. Other factors you'll need to take into account are how much do you want to spend, and if you are somewhat locked into a certain brand already. What I mean by this is, I had 3 Canon lenses when I was looking for my last camera, so while I knew I wanted a lighter and smaller mirrorless camera, I also wanted to use my old lenses, so I mainly looked at Canons because that was what the lenses were I had for previously, and that's why I ended up with the M50. Once you have your choice, you now need to look at what's needed to actually connect it to your PC. Some cameras will connect with the cable supplied, most won't. In most cases you'll need some form of capture card. Now there's quite a few of these out there, but generally they come in 2 forms. One is an internal card that you have to plug into your motherboard inside of your PC, like the Elgato 4K 60 Pro. The other is an external type. These are the most popular as they are very easy to connect. Generally they plug straight into your USB on the PC and then by a cable to your camera. While there are a few brands out there, I've found Elgato to make good quality equipment, so I'd suggest something like the Elgato Camlink 4K. Now, for some cameras, even with the Camlink connected, you may still require a further USB connection to make it work properly. This is something I had to do originally with my M50. Also, if you happen to be using a Canon, they've recently released a new beta version of their EOS utility program that allows you to simply plug the camera directly into the PC without any capture card and only with one cable, and no need for programs like SparkoCam, and then you can just use it straight as a webcam. It's not available for all Canon cameras at this stage. However, I have tried it and I had some issues with it where my input video feed would run smoothly for 4 or 5 seconds and then it would freeze for about 1 second and then repeat. That being said, many other people did look at it and found it worked very well for them. So that might be an option as well if you've got a Canon camera. Some other brands also have similar sort of programs that you can run for them, but most don't. As I said, the Canon one's in beta, so it will hopefully get better over time. So that's a huge plus for Canon cameras. Alright, so now you've decided on a camera and you've got it all hooked up, you've got the right programs that you needed, and all you need to do is decide on what lens is the best and some settings on your camera. The lens choice will come down to how you want your shot or your stream video to look. This can all be somewhat complicated and should really have its own video to explain focal lengths and aperture and ISO settings, but I'll try to give it a really basic overview just to get you started with choosing the right lens. The very quick breakdown is this. Focal length is the distance the lens can focus on. Your kit lens will likely be something like an 18 to 55, meaning its focal length can be anywhere between 18mm and 55mm, with 18mm being wider or zoomed out, and 55 being tighter or more zoomed in. You can also buy what's called a prime lens. All this means is it's a lens that can't zoom, so it might be 50mm, and that's all it is. To move closer, you physically have to grab your camera and move it closer to what you're trying to take a photo of. But these are good as they generally have a wider aperture range. Aperture is the amount that your lens can open to let in the light. More light is generally a better shot. This is generally shown on the front of your lens as 1 by 4.5 to 5.6 or something similar. What this means is that the lens has an aperture range of 4.5 when fully zoomed out and 5.6 when zoomed in. The lower number, the wider the lens can go and the more light it can let in. For your reference, my stream is filmed at 14mm focal length at 4.5 aperture and I'm about 70 centimeters from the camera, while the majority of this video is filmed at 18mm focal length at about 5.4 aperture and I'm about 2 meters from the camera. So for your shot, you'll decide on what you want for your stream. Do you want a very wide shot in a dark room, but your camera's hard up against the wall on your desk so that the camera's close to you? You'll need a lower focal length to get the wide shot and a lower aperture to gather as much light as possible from the dark room. Or perhaps you have your desk a meter away from the wall and your camera set up on a tripod against the wall. Now you can have a longer focal length, or perhaps you've watched my lighting video. If not, you can see it up the top of the screen and you've got a nice bright key light and you can use a cheaper lens with a wide aperture. You'll need to look at what suits your personal setup and decide on what you need. Now I mentioned a lens that has a less wide aperture will generally make that lens cheaper for you. And most of us want a cheaper option, especially when you're starting out. So here it is. Once you know what focal length you want, you can either buy a very expensive lens with a very low aperture, it'll open much wider, making your images much brighter, amongst other things, or you can buy a cheap or cheapish version of that same lens with a higher aperture, so it won't go as wide, so your images won't be as bright, but then in your camera settings, you can increase your ISO settings to compensate. Now, ISO sounds like an amazing magical fix-all that can save you thousands on buying better quality lenses. But with all things, there's a trade-off. The higher the ISO, the more graininess that will be in the video. So, it's a balancing act, with the aim to keep ISO as low as possible while still getting the brightness you need for the shot. Just remember, you can always add a bit more light if you need to from a key light or lamp, etc., so that you can reduce your ISO level so that there's no or less noticeable graininess in your shot. Alrighty then. That's actually a lot to take in for what seemed to be a pretty simple video to begin with. So if you still have questions, and honestly I probably would, feel free to comment below and I'll endeavour to answer them as fast and as well as I can. Or if you want to have a chat live, you can jump on my stream. I stream on Twitch every Sunday, Monday and Tuesday nights from 6:30 PM Australian Eastern Time. Sometimes I stream on other nights as well. So you can jump in there and we can have a chat about it all. Cool. Hopefully I've helped you with everything you need for live streaming with a real camera. If I did, please hit the like button, and if you're interested in more videos about content creation, hit the subscribe and bell buttons. This really helps the channel, so thanks for doing that. Lastly, shout out to David Kelly. Thanks for the support. It means a lot, mate. And to everyone else, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and remember, you're awesome, mate.